Thank you to Professor Brown for the warm introduction. You may not know this, but Professor Brown was my 1L torts professor many moons ago, so this is a cool full circle moment for me. Thank you also to the Lincoln Doug Society for inviting me to participate. I'm just so grateful to be here today, standing next to three very accomplished speakers, and it's a great honor. I'd like to extend a special thank you to my partner Miles Coleman for his help in preparing, to God above for the opportunity, and to my wife, family, and friends for their support and encouragement. Now on to the proposition. A welcoming classroom should never come at the cost of animus towards religious beliefs. While inclusivity is often a valuable goal, if it means forcing parents to choose between public education and raising their children in their religious tradition, then it becomes the opposite of inclusive. It becomes selective, ideological, and exclusive. The free exercise of religious beliefs and the passing down of those beliefs from parent to child has shaped American history since the beginning and continues to be central to the moral framework of this nation today. To disregard this religious tradition in the name of some modern inclusivity is to deny one of the oldest and most constitutionally protected freedoms in our country. Religious families are not being merely sensitive towards the inclusion of certain ideologies. They are standing firm in their worldview, standing firm in beliefs that they know to be determinative of their salvation, an issue that to them far transcends the political whims of modern society. And all that religious sensitivity really asks here is that parents simply be kept in the loop on their child's education and have a say in it. The court in Mahmoud understood these things, and tonight I would ask that you follow suit and vote no to the proposition. But if we're going to decide whether inclusivity of new modern ideas should override the sanctity of religious freedoms, we must first look at the crucial role that religion has played in American history. Simply put, we can't tell the story of America without religious values. From the Puritans and Pilgrims to the Declaration of Independence and the the American Revolution, to Reverend King and the Civil Rights Movement, from the Cold War stand against an atheist communist Soviet Union to present-day prison reform, homeless shelters, and various charities. The foundation of all these things is the same: transcendent morals and values rooted in something bigger than ourselves. More than just privately held beliefs, religious values have been and continue to be an undeniable force for public good in our country. And who better to pass those values down from generation to generation than parents? We have long understood this in America, which is why historically public education rarely extended beyond the elementary subjects. It was understood that the parents, as part of their primary duty to educate, would teach them everything else, including a moral and religious worldview that they saw fit. But now, through forced inclusivity of brand new social ideologies in our public schools, we are attempting to deny all deference to that deeply rooted tradition of parental discretion. How long before we lose all the good that has accompanied it? Now, while inclusivity can be a worthy goal, it should not come at the expense of the moral character and traditions of this nation. Time is often a strong measurement of successful ideas, and if the protection of parents' religious freedom to bring their children up accordingly hasn't proven its worth over the last 249 years, then I ask, what has? To quote a great universal truth we all know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Historically and overwhelmingly, our courts have agreed. As Miles so eloquently laid out for us, the right of parents to raise their children in accordance with their faith has continuously prevailed in the face of state intervention. As Yoder and now Mahmoud tell us, the First Amendment Free Exercise Clause guarantees those rights. Additionally, the Supreme Court has reminded us that children are not merely creatures of the state, but that the custody, care, and nurture of the child reside first in the parents, whose primary function and freedom include preparation for obligations the state can neither supply nor hinder. This parental liberty, as stated by the court, is, quote, perhaps the oldest of the fundamental liberty interest recognized, end quote. So clearly then, a school curriculum that seeks to educate on secular ideas that are antithetical to many religions, without allowing for any deference to those religions, directly burdens and unconstitutionally interferes with the parents' fundamental rights. And if protecting these rights is labeled sensitive, then I think we should all be a little overly sensitive. And let's not forget who we're really talking about here. Children. Children, especially the younger children in kindergarten through 5th grade, are extremely impressionable. You might disagree and say that these children have the freedom to make informed decisions on their own, and that the school is merely equipping them with all the facts. But what about the 6, 7, or 8-year-olds, being taught that doctors guess people's gender at birth and sometimes get it wrong? That the institution of marriage is merely just what some grown-ups do when they feel like they love each other. These young children can barely tie their shoes, ride a bike, or pick out their own clothes in the morning. Yet we assume they can digest these complex ideological claims and meaningfully reflect upon them? That is an absurd expectation. The reality is they will take the material they're taught in school and accept it as true because their teacher, who they trust, told them so. I'm certain that none of us here as kids seriously challenged that the sky is blue, that 2 + 2 = 4, that A comes before B. In fact, the entire point of kindergarten through 5th grade is to make sure we accepted these things as true. So when schools introduce topics on gender identity, sexuality, etc., to elementary students and present them in ways that go against the religious worldview of so many, they're not just passively informing or equipping, they're actively shaping beliefs. That's not inclusion, that's indoctrination, and it results in the total exclusion of religious families who may disagree. But who does this really place the most significant burden on? The families. Realistically, there are 2 alternatives for parents in the face of forced inclusion of anti-religious values. 1, endure the significant financial strain of putting their child in private school or homeschool. Or 2, remove their child from school and face the legal consequences of compulsory education laws and forfeit their child's education in totem. Put more succinctly by our very own Judge Quattlebaum in his dissent of this case at the 4th Circuit, the forced inclusion of these topics forces the parents to make a choice. Either adhere to their faith, which is paramount to all, to them, or receive a free public education for their children. This sad dichotomy could not ring truer for anyone than it does for the financially poor religious parents who simply cannot afford private or homeschool alternatives. And to add, this sacrifice only becomes more severe for parents with children with learning or developmental disabilities, who often require the accommodations and resources that only public school systems can provide. So if we want to talk seriously about inclusivity, then let's at least be consistent. It's not very inclusive to force the financially poor, with no realistic alternatives, to sacrifice the religious upbringing of their children just to access basic school education. That's not freedom, nor justice, nor equity. That is coercion. But it need not be this way, and in fact, as Miles has pointed out for us, has not ever been this way. Contrary to the assertions of the opposition, Mahmoud is not going to cause the sky to fall. Rather than make new radical assertions, the court in Mahmoud simply recognized the sound legal foundations of laws that are already on the books in all 50 states and in D.C. These states have long recognized that with the right accommodations and attitudes, we can forgo burdening the rights and the exclusion of religious communities. For example, the laws of 47 states and D.C. already provide parents discretion as to whether their child will be taught sexual education. The other 3 states leave the issue to localities, which generally follow the same opt-out policies. Many states have taken these opt-outs even further, Hawaii being an example, rightfully allowing them outside of the scope of sexual education. Specifically, these states either, 1, require notice to parents of certain topics in their child's curriculum, 2, allow parents to review the proposed curriculum and materials, or 3, allow for a child's partial or total opt-out of that instruction if the parent so chooses. And most of these states require a combination of these options. So it really wouldn't be some new strain on schools to allow opt-outs based on religious beliefs, as the opposition has suggested. It would simply be the utilization of a structure that every state in this country has already established. And I might add, if we're going to allow administrative difficulties to get in the way of our deeply rooted constitutional rights, then we need to seriously reevaluate our priorities in this country. Now, in conclusion, inclusivity, while a good thing, should not be a Trojan horse for ideology. When schools elevate one worldview at the expense of another, it is not education, but instead indoctrination. Inclusivity without religious accommodation is simply exclusion in disguise. If public schools are truly for all Americans, they must respect religious beliefs as a core part of that inclusivity, not as a casualty of it. Allowing opt-outs parental notice is not a rejection of inclusivity, but instead a necessary balance in a pluralistic society. Forcing parents to forfeit the religious upbringing of their children just to access basic education is not freedom, it is coercion. Therefore, we must protect the sacred right of families to raise their children according to religious convictions, especially in the face of public education policies that would degrade it. And for these reasons, I urge you to vote no to tonight's proposition. Thank you.